and welcome to Next Shift Build a Better Houston, our C3 Student Career Awareness Day for 2020. We're super sad that we have to be coming to you virtual. We would much rather be able to see you face to face, but we're so glad you're able to join us today. We're going to kick off today's session with an absolutely amazing testimonial to what you can do in construction if you put your mind to it. I'm excited to introduce to you Angela Cody, who is a project executive at Gilbane Building, and she is the chairman of the board at ACE Mentor. She also sits as a board member at Galveston Career Connect and is a member of the HISD CTE Chamber of Commerce. Angela is going to share with us how you build a successful career in construction. Angela, take us away.
Wow, thank you very much, Angela, for the nice introduction, and thank you to the C3 group for putting this together. This is really cool. I'm excited to share my career and my path and give you guys some direction on some different things that you may not have thought of in the past. And I thank all the sponsors. Without all of the sponsors, there's no way that we could continue to do this and share all of the awesome path that we've done. So, okay, well, I might as well get started. How to build a career in construction. So on the next slide, a little bit about myself, and Angela had already did an awesome introduction. I got an architectural engineering degree from Penn State. As Angela said, I'm a project executive for Gilbane. I'll get to a little bit more about what is that and how do you get to be one of those. And I live in Missouri City. I got 4 kiddos. One of my kids is at the Reese Center in Fort Bend. He's a welding student there. So if any of the students are watching from there, go on with your bad selves for being welders. And then, and I'm also the chairman of the board of the ACE Mentoring Program, where we mentor high school kids in architecture, construction, and engineering. So that picture that you guys see of me up there, that pretty much sums up fun. I know we've been wearing masks for our lives. Everyone's been covering up their faces. And this picture was taken a few years ago when we were renovating a hotel. And if you looked real close at that picture, my face is actually gold because we were painting a room in a hotel a fancy gold color, and the overspray covered all of us. So we had those masks on to actually respirate and be safe. But that was that's one of my favorite pictures because that kind of sums it up. You get to get dirty and get to wear a pair of pink safety glasses. So if you could go to the next slide. Okay, so when I was in elementary school, junior high, high school, there were a lot of things that I just loved doing, all my hobbies, right? I loved kind of being a leader. I always ended up being the person that we wanted to do a play or we wanted to do something. And I was always the one who kind of wrangled everybody up and was the organizer. I loved art. I loved doing anything, using different materials and painting and drawing, and always had sketchbooks. I did a lot of cartoons. I was always drawing cartoons for my family and making jokes. I loved history. That was my favorite class. I could never remember names or dates, but what I realized I liked was the architecture and the fact that amazing things you could still see, and you couldn't see the people, you couldn't see what their lives were like, but you could kind of figure that out from the kind of buildings that they had. And the mystery behind that was really cool to me. I always liked money. I always liked figuring out, I always had a little bucket, and every time I had a few dollars, it went into my bucket, and it was like a metal tin, and I always would count my money and organize my money. And I didn't have very much, and my family didn't have very much, but we made sure that, but I understood it, and I respected money. I wanted to just how it worked. I loved puzzles. I was always doing a puzzle or doing some sort of problem, and not math in the sense that it was adding and subtracting like school math. I liked the logic puzzles and how you were going to put things together and how things were going to work. And I loved reading mysteries, and I liked figuring things out. kind of figuring it out before somebody else did. I like that challenge too. So on to the next slide. So I was my big dreams, right? What did I want to be when I grew up? I always thought I was going to be an architect. I loved looking at old buildings. I grew up in Maryland, which is near Washington, D.C. And growing up, I always really looked at these old buildings and thought, wow, this is really cool. This is, like I said before, you could see the history of the people that lived there, and you could kind of figure out, well, they lived there, they worked there, what their lives were like. And there was so much mystery behind an old building. What happened in there? Like, what did it look like? And people treasures in old buildings. So, and I would look at them and I want to convert them into other things. I would draw them and say, you know, that old house could be this, or that old building could be turned into that. I also wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. I think that fell short. Maybe I'll throw a few accents out while we're talking today. But the point of that is that there's nothing wrong with dreaming big. There's nothing wrong with thinking that you're going to be famous one day. I'm going to be on Saturday Night Live. I'm going to, you know, be goofy and funny. And as my career progressed, part of that was being yourself, right? Being somebody that, if I want to be funny, I'm going to be funny. If I'm going to do an accent and somebody doesn't like it, then they can live with it, because this is who I am. And part of that came into play as I realized there weren't a lot of women when I started in this industry. So I had to stay true to myself. And if I wanted to be anything I wanted to be, I was going to do it. So the next slide. So wanting to be an architect, I kind of wanted to figure out what that meant, right? What is being an architect? When I was in high school, I took some classes in drafting, and that was really interesting because you got to see the parts and pieces. And the drafting teacher had told us about this design competition. So you got to work with partners, and you got to have a design and submit it to all of these professionals. And as I got older and I became in my own profession, the ACE mentoring program was a lot like that design competition, where I got to put together a house and introduce it to something. Now on the flip side, I get to be a mentor like those people were to me when I was in high school. I really wanted to know what I wanted to be, but you have to kind of have a path, right? I did some research on different colleges and schools, and around my junior year, I spent a lot of time looking to see what it was that I wanted to do. So I thought for sure, again, that I wanted to do architecture. I didn't even know construction was an option. So, and like I said at the beginning, I really love to draw and do art. And I would find myself drawing houses and drawing buildings, and my time when other girls were, you know, drawing clothes and looking at colors of clothes, I was drawing houses and figuring out how rooms were going to connect and where the door was going to go and what color I was going to paint it. So I was dead set as a senior in high school, about this time, senior in high school, that's what I was going to do. I had applied to some colleges. If we want to go to the next one. So my mom and me, we went on a college tour. I'm sure some of the kids on the phone have done that or thinking about that. And I went to a bunch of schools. I looked at architecture programs, and then I saw architectural engineering. I said, what the heck is that? Sounds cool, right? I didn't realize that it was engineering. I saw the architectural side of it. And as I kept going, and I kept researching all these different programs, I had gotten into some architecture programs. And then I saw the architectural engineering kept kind of nagging at me. So I did some more research, and I said, well, architectural engineering is making the building work, right? And I realized that it was more about not just about the way the building was structured, but it was, or how it was going to lay out in the pretty picture at the end. There's a lot that goes into it in the front, right? You have to have a structure, you have to have plumbing, you have to have mechanical systems so that you can have air conditioning and heating, you need lighting, you need sound control, that's called acoustics. So, you know, this is pretty cool. I kind of like that there's a lot of different pieces to this. So I decided to go to Penn State and study architectural engineering. I got there, and remember I said I liked math, but I didn't know that how much math was going to be in an engineering program. But you know what? It's called working hard and figuring out what you don't know and working through it, right? There was, college isn't always easy, but sometimes college is kind of proves to you what you can do and what you can't do, and then what you really like. So I kind of, I was like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. So I said, maybe architectural engineering isn't for me. And I applied to the architecture school at Penn State. And at the same time, I was taking a construction management class. And the construction management class was super cool, right? I got to do these, you know, it wasn't at all what I thought. It was this awesome puzzle that was about money, that was about solving a mystery on how I was going to logistically plan all this stuff. So all of the pieces of the building were kind of in my hands. So at the end of that class, I found out that I had gotten into the architecture program, and I had to make a decision if I wanted to do what I thought I always wanted to do, or if I was going to take kind of a risk and stay in architectural engineering and do construction. And I chose to go into construction. I said, you know, I really, really like this. I like the idea that I get to influence the design and other things. So let's go to the next slide. So these are the reasons why I chose construction. I got to see my work. So I knew as an architect that I was going to be able to design great things. And then the more I thought about it, I said, well, now I get to not only be part of, but I can see multiple great things. Now after I've been doing this, I won't tell you years, but now that I've been doing it, I can drive around Houston and show my kids things that I did, what I built, and what I changed the city and the skyline. I get to spend millions of other people's dollars. I have to do it wisely, and I have to be a steward of their money. That means I'm responsible to make sure that I'm responsibly and accurately spending other people's money, but they're trusting me with making their dreams come true. So that is a pretty amazing thing. Someone has an idea, an architect has an idea, and they've spent so much time making this idea come to life on paper. Now it's my responsibility to make sure that it is done correctly, that this design is going to actually work in the field, that we can make it pop up from that paper and they can come out and they can show their kids that their idea came to life. I knew that no 2 days were ever going to be the same for me. And that is absolutely true to this day, many years later, that there is no 2 days alike. Because if I'm building a building outside, that building changes every day. Every day there's people that show up and they're building something. So when I go back out there, something has changed. I get to spend time outside. I get to, I realized young, I didn't want to be in the office all day. I didn't want a job where I came to the same space every day. And some people like that. Some people like that their neighbor at their desk is the same person for 30 years. And now I look and see that I've had probably 15 different teams of people that I've grown with, and then you move on to the next one. I changed skylines, which is amazing. I can, as we go through some of my projects, I'll be able to show you guys some things that I did that changed cities. And I think that to be able to influence in that way is awesome. I still get to problem solve. And influence the design as the construction team. We see where problems are. If I'm renovating an old building, like I get to do sometimes, or I get to build a new building, there's always going to be some things that change. There's some things that are problems, and I have to come up with solutions. So I get to do a little bit of the designing part that I liked, because I get to say, well, architect, if we move that door 6 feet over, we're going to save money because I have materials that are less, or I get to do, I have different options. So if we could go to the next slide. The one thing that was kind of missing in everything was that I didn't have anybody in my life that did anything to do with construction. My family was, my dad is an accountant, and my mom worked for the Postal Service. And we had, my neighbors, growing up outside of Washington, D.C., lots of people were part of the government. So I didn't have anybody, not anybody in my family, no one was a construction person. When we did things around our house, I love this little duct tape thing, because around my house there was duct tape, and my dad had a jar of nails and screws, and if that couldn't fix it, then well, it usually did fix it somehow, but it didn't last for very long, is how it was. But and I knew that bothered my mom, right? That she wanted things a certain way, but there was but we weren't a wealthy family. We couldn't just pay to have somebody come in every time somebody needed to have things fixed. And it's interesting that as I continued in the construction, everyone was like, why construction? Why would you want to do that? That's a dirty job. That's a interesting job, but why would you want to do it? But no one ever said that I couldn't do it. Everyone just wanted to kind of know why. They thought it was different, because no one had ever seen that in my life. No one had ever been around that career. So this was a whole new experience, not just for me, but for my family, because my family was kind of, they were extremely supportive. And I guess on to the next slide is that I had, even though they didn't understand completely what I was doing, they were my cheerleaders. I mean, they really supported me. And this is a picture of me and my dad. And I had, I wrote something not too long ago for Women in Construction Day about having family that supports you when, and knows that a girl can do anything. So it doesn't matter that I was a girl, that I wanted to go into construction. It was that, do whatever you want, Ange, we're here behind you. We're going to support you. And if you need help, you let us know, but we know you're going to be awesome. We may not understand what you're doing or even why you're doing it, but we support that you are going to do a good job. So remember that. And I know not everybody has cheerleaders or people that support when they pick different careers that maybe aren't what your parents thought you were going to be, or what your family or even your friends. Sometimes your friends are like, why do you want to do construction? That's disgusting. You're going to be dirty all the time. Your hair is going to be in a big frizzy mess all the time. But there are people that are out there to support you. So sometimes if you choose some of the careers that we talk about today, it may be difficult for you to have that conversation with your family, that it isn't a traditional route. Maybe your family always wanted you to be a doctor. And you're like, you know what? I really think I would love to be a carpenter. And those are two things where you use your hands, right? A doctor uses their hands, but so does a carpenter. So as we go forward, onto the next slide, I'll talk to you about where it took me. So like I said, I grew up in Maryland, and while I was in school, I had some internships. So I had traveled around. I worked in Memphis, Tennessee. I worked in Washington, D.C. I had some pretty cool jobs. But when I was graduating, I didn't realize how important people with my education, but also people willing to do this kind of job work. So the construction industry has tons of opportunities. So within construction, there were so many people who know how to build and people who know how to manage building are critical. We have to know what is, everybody needed to, there's a place for everybody, I guess is the point. There's tons of opportunity. And I had an opportunity to come to Houston. And when I was talking about changing skylines and influencing a city, my first job ever was building the Astros stadium. So if anybody's really good at math, then you'll probably figure out how old I am, but we're not going to talk about that today. But we are going to talk about some opportunities, right? If you look at this stadium, I was very young, but I had no idea what I was doing. I might have gone to college, but being on an actual construction site, and my dad dropped me off in Texas. He rode down here with me and he looked at me and goes, I don't know, I'm a little worried leaving you down here. Are you going to be okay? I said, I'm going to be fine, Dad. I'm going to be fine. Then my first day at work, I was in a construction trailer, and I was the only young woman that had a project engineer type of role, and I was welcomed. I was nervous. I didn't know. I thought, well, I'm a girl. They're gonna think that I can't do this, or they're gonna give me the junk job, right? I'll get to do the stuff that girls do if I want to be what I thought. Maybe they would not treat me very nice, or that the guys in the field would do what everybody says construction workers do, right? Construction workers are gonna whistle at the girls and they're gonna harass them. None of that happened. I'm like, wow, this is cool. I actually got to go out here and build a project, and I was part of the team, and they gave me responsibilities. They gave me some big responsibilities. I was in charge of putting all the seats. I was in charge of the scoreboards, the sound system. So I want to ask the group, since we're, I probably should have asked some more questions along the way, but what do you think, who are some of the folks that we needed in order to build a ballpark? Your ballpark here in Houston. In the chat, can you guys give me some ideas of some folks that maybe were necessary to build a building like this? I'll give everybody a second. Okay. We'll get you guys interactive at some point, I promise. So if you think about how many people in Houston needed a, how many people in Houston were needed to build this stadium? So obviously we needed folks that could do concrete and steel. And when people think of jobs like concrete, they probably think, oh, that's going to be a hot job. That's a job where, there we go, carpenters. Yep, definitely carpenters. So if you guys look on the screen, you see those archways? Those were made out of precast concrete. Precast concrete is concrete that is made off site and brought in. So that's art, right? If you go to the stadium, you see art. So sometimes people don't think about jobs like being a concrete worker or being a steel worker. So everyone probably has at least seen the Houston Astros Stadium or had been inside the Astros Stadium. Iron workers were extremely important. That's one of the coolest roofs you probably ever seen, right? It not only does it go up and it has this cool arch that it does, but then it rolls back and forth. So not only did we need iron workers and we needed roofers, we needed folks that were going to do the electronics to make that roof work. We needed people to make those scoreboards work, all the big lights. And there's electricians that, and there's different kinds of each one of those, right? There's electricians that specialize in residential lighting. There's electricians that just do things like scoreboards and video boards. There's electricians that do low voltage wiring so that you have your sound systems and your internet connections through a building. So there's so many, there were thousands of people that were on this job. And there was also a ton of designers on this job. You needed to have architects, and the architect was the person that worked with the city of Houston to kind of get an idea of what they wanted, right? They came up with the overall picture, and then they took that and they send it to all their consultants, which are engineers. There was engineers who did things for the electrical, the mechanical system. That space that you're looking at on the picture is air conditioned. How the heck do you air condition a roof that opens? That's pretty difficult, but that is a science. Not only did someone have to design it, but then they had to install it. So there's a ton that went into this building. And you know you're old when they start changing things in the building. But and this is a picture from when it was called Enron Field, which was a long time ago. So if we go to the next one. So when I got to Houston, I didn't, there were other people that were like me that had the same job, but they had gotten there in different ways. And that is something I want to talk to all of you guys about, because I have a really cool job, but I got there in in the college path, right? Not only did I go college, but I went through architectural engineering, which was a more difficult path for the same career. The community colleges have some amazing programs that do the same type of things to prepare you for construction management. There's construction management programs at a lot of our local universities. I know that the Prairie View has an amazing program. Obviously, Houston has one of the best construction management programs, and that's something in all of our backyards. So the Cougars are one of my favorite groups for the students, because they really understand where things are coming from, and as well as Prairie View. A&M has an amazing program for construction management, and University of Texas has an architectural engineering program that's similar to what I did at Penn State. The other angle that was very interesting was that a lot of from the trades and crafts training kind of took a path through the trades. So I have coworkers, and even my husband was an electrician, and my husband became a foreman for an electrician, and then he worked for a general contractor, and he was their mechanical, electrical, and plumbing coordinator. And then he kept working his way up, and now he's an executive in another construction company here in Houston. So if you have the will and you have the opportunities that you take, the one thing that with every single one of these routes to the same job is no one's going to come to you. As much as we want to believe, that someone is going to just come to you and offer you your dream job, that's not always how it works. Sometimes you just have to ask. Sometimes you have to ask at the company you work for. It says, I want to build that one. That one looks really cool. How do I get on that team? But some of it means you have to keep researching. When I worked at the Astros Stadium, and part of the Astros Stadium, when you come in, it's a historic building. I loved that. I loved that I got to do that. And as I went further in my career, I realized, I want to do more historic preservations. If you look back at what I liked doing as a kid, that's what I was really passionate about. So I looked for a company that did that, and that's where I went. And then but I couldn't resist coming back to Houston, because I love Houston. So if you want to go to the next one. So there's a lot of different jobs too. If we talk about the overall look of what we talked about, all the different folks that were involved on that project, and there's a lot of people that take the path that we were just talking about, and they go into superintendents. So being a superintendent is more in the field. They're the ones who give a little bit more. They're more hands-on in the field, giving directions to subcontractors. So there's a lot of, the way it's structured on a construction project is that you'll have your designers, your owners. This is kind of backwards on my slide here, but then we have a general contractor, and a general contractor will have the project management staff, which is someone like me that coordinates the work, make sure that the folks that want to build the work, I take that, get give them contracts so that they can do the work, and then we coordinate it to make sure that they show up with the right materials on time. And I'm ultimately responsible for making sure that the budget for my owners work. A lot of the work that I do is on grants and on public funds. So I have to make sure that I don't go over the price. I have to make sure that we have to be creative and work with all of these folks, these plumbers, electricians, mechanical contractors, drywall contractors. And each one of these also has a role like I have, but they also have it within their companies. So, and if you go to an electrical contractors, sometimes they have electricians that work their way up to be foremen, and then they're project managers, and then they're owners of their companies. So there's so many opportunities within the industry that anything you dream of, anything that you have a good idea that, I would kind of love to take my video gaming, and how do I become a construction video gamer? Well, believe it or not, there's jobs within our industry where we hire at my company at Gilbane, we hire people that do video games, and they're part of our BIM, which is modeling buildings, right? You're taking the electronic version and you're making that building so that you can see all the parts and pieces, and it's 3D, interactive. It's amazing. Okay, let's go to the next one. So this was a job that when you drive by and I can say, hey, I built the African forest at the Houston Zoo. If any of you guys have been on a field trip to the zoo or have been over there, this was one of the most amazing challenges that I've ever had. And I realized then that I really liked building animal containment spaces. And that probably sounds like, what the heck does that mean? Because when I talked before about no 2 days are ever the same, think about what the first one here is the chimpanzees. The chimpanzees are some smart animals. So I had to learn a lot about chimpanzees in order to build an exhibit for them. So I don't just get a set of drawings, and the drawings say the walls of the chimpanzee exhibit need to be at X amount degrees. So as much as you think, okay, we'll just do that, but why, right? Why do the chimpanzee walls need to be at a certain degree? Well, because chimps can escape. I don't want to be the one responsible for chimps running through the Med Center in downtown Houston. I got to build it right, and I can only have one chance. So, and it needs to be safe, and it needs to be home for the animals. And part of my job is to understand who I'm building for, right? I have to understand not only the animals, but I have to understand their keepers. And if you ever met somebody who's an animal keeper, they built a rhino exhibit, that's the elephant exhibit, the chimp exhibit. They love their animals, and they want them to be safe. They want them to be happy. They want them to be able to live a life of enjoyment. And that is my responsibility to understand that and to work with them. And to do this kind of work is very fulfilling and very interesting and creative. And I get to work with artists from all over the world. But if you think about, look at that middle picture, that's the rhino exhibit. So that wasn't that isn't dirt and that isn't real rocks. That's concrete. So when somebody says, I don't want to be a concrete worker, look at that wall. That's called shotcrete. So there were guys that know how to do concrete. And what they did is they took it and they made a mesh wall and then they sprayed concrete against that wall. And then someone came after them and carved each one of those rocks. And then someone came after them and was an artist and painted it. So when you think that there isn't things that are creative and interesting, you have to just follow your dreams. So if you really like doing art or you like being creative, don't ever limit yourself. If there's an opportunity that you have, maybe I just said that, right? Maybe I just said, I like building animal exhibits. And you're like, God, that would be a really cool job. So you can just have that in the back of your mind, or you can do something, right? You can do something and you could say, well, what could I do to do that kind of job? And that takes research. That means that, again, like I said before, no one's going to just come and hand you a job to build something like this. You have to do some research and figure out where you kind of fit in that and how you could do that. And you have to use your resources too. You guys are all on this C3 call right now. And C3 is supposed to be a resource so that you guys could say, how do I get a job doing shotcrete, which is that concrete work that you saw? Or how do I get work if you're a welder and you're watching this, there's big fences and piping that goes around that. How do I get to be a welder at the Houston Zoo? That would be awesome, right? So we go on to the next slide. So I've done a lot of animal containment, if you can see. We did the aquarium, which was a renovation, which I told you I like doing renovations and dirty work, but how you can change a building that was, at one point, there was just a shark hanging where you now see an oil rig and a huge 2-story aquarium. I wish I had a video to show you guys us setting that tank, but that took a lot of logistics and planning and math and how are we going to fit it into an existing building? The one on the end is the penguin exhibit. We put that's a exhibit that, again, where I was talking about the amazing concrete, that was shotcrete. And not only that, but think about all the different folks that went into building that exhibit right there. I had to make sure that not only was there someone doing the amazing rock work, but someone got an opportunity to build a glass on a curve. So there's a lot of jobs that a lot of people don't think about, but there are, and it's becoming a lost art. So in the middle, if you look at, that's a historic preservation I did in Maryland that was a historic hotel. But if you look at the ceiling, there's plaster work up there. So again, somebody who maybe liked building models or like doing, I think right now I see a lot of people building like their own masks and doing different hands-on type of things. They took moldings of the existing, that when I got to this building, it was completely gutted almost. And there were just signs of what it used to look like. So a lot of that was recreated by artists. So if you like being creative, if you like doing things and being outside and traveling around the world, look at all the opportunities in front of you. We can go to the next one. So this was a cool job. Down at Moody Gardens, they have a SpongeBob Sub-Pants. It's a 4D interactive theater. So again, back to every day being different, but I also get to learn something new every day. So not only was I learning about chimps and rhinos, then I got to learn about a 4D interactive theater. This is the first one that was ever in the United States, and I get to do it for Nickelodeon. Wow, what a responsibility, right? I was scared. You're not going to know everything. And that's what is so exciting about this job, is that you get to learn and figure things out and become an expert in different things that you never even thought you would be an expert on. So there's nothing that you can't do if you put your mind to it. Really, it comes down to being patient and asking people, being confident to ask the right questions, because sometimes it's hard to ask, right? But no one had ever done it before. So I had to ask questions and talk to the designers and make sure that we had the right tradesmen to be able to do this kind of work and be creative. I'm going to go to the next one. So this was another thing that we had done when we built the SpongeBob exhibit. We also built a tent, and it was a ice tent outside in Galveston. So when we were talking about the stadium and the people involved with that, if you look at how many people were probably involved with building a tent that had to be 9 in Galveston. You guys all live in Houston. Seems pretty impossible, doesn't it? But we did it because, and not only did we do it, but we had to engineer it. We had to get the right people there to install it. And the people that put this tent in, they travel all over the world. So you may think, who wants to be a tent installer? Those people aren't just tent installers. Those guys are building exhibits around the world. So they worked through the whole process. So they were carpenters. They were jacks of all trade is what I call them, because they really knew how to do an entire space. We can go to the next one. So to sum it up, I think this picture here is something that is the most amazing, that we get to help people. And you guys have been through hurricanes here, you've been through some terrible storms, but that happens all over the world. So with the that you can learn in construction, you can pretty much go anywhere you want to go, but you can also help people. So when we talk about helping people, doesn't always mean that you have to have money. Sometimes helping people just means you got to use these. So and being able to organize something like a disaster is some people travel around the world and they do that everywhere. So every single skill that I talked about before, whether you're a plumber, an electrician, a welder, or a project manager like me, you can have opportunities anywhere. So it also matters with the economy. If the economy changes and there's no jobs, there's always jobs in construction. Okay, last one. Oh, almost last one. Right now I'm working out at the airport, which is a new international terminal for Houston, which is going to be awesome. And then the next one. So where's the future, right? Where am I going from here? I don't know. That's what's so exciting about this job. I can't say that I'll be working on this job for the next few years, but what is my next job? And that's what is exciting too. I know that I'm going to have an opportunity to learn and do something different anywhere. Does anybody have any questions? Somebody's got to have a question.
So we didn't get any questions in the panel yet, and we are almost right up at time so that everybody can take a quick break. Angela, that was amazing. I love the integration of art and how you talked about how just you can go anywhere. And I love the idea that if you're really into doing all of the rescue work or the immediate emergency work, how you can travel all over the world. We did just get a question right now to ask, how long did it take you to get through your program of study?
Okay, so that Doing the architectural engineering path was a 5-year program. That was long. Most programs for construction management, if you go to a university, will take you 4 years. But if you go to a local community, you can usually get some certificates in a year or two. And then if you want to do any kind of trade work, you can go right into the field and also be getting your education simultaneously. So a lot of people who don't have money for school can go to a trade and do their education and be doing and making money at the same time, which is good.
And getting experience, right? And exposure.
Absolutely.
So excellent. Thank you so much. All right, we are out of time for our general session. I just wanted to give you quick details on how to do to move to your next session. There are 2 agendas where you